From the 19th verse, we have been seeing Brahman's supreme manifestation is shown analytically. That's from 19 to 38, where the Lord, Sri Bhagavan, is enumerating where all you can identify Brahman. So he is picking up the best where you can identify the self. The last we did was the 22nd verse. So he is choosing the best of everything, with the only objective is that we always associate sattva, positivity, to Brahman. We always associate positive qualities to Brahman. So it is easier to identify Brahman in the good, in the best of things. So when you experience these things, the chances are you are reminded of the self. The last we did was the 22nd verse, where he said, of the Vedas, I am the Samaveda, Vedanam Samavedosmi, Devanam Asmi, Vasavaha, of the gods, I am Vasava, which is Indra, Indriyanam Manushchasmi, of the senses, I am the mind. We said I am the mind of the senses because it is the mind that is responsible for your organs of perception and organs of action. Without the mind backing, you can't perceive the sense perception. You can't perceive the world. When your mind is disturbed, your physiological functions go haywire. When your mind is not backing, in fact, as we also learned when he says, I am the mind of the senses, mind has to be taken as the mind and the intellect. You can take it collectively. So when he says, I am the mind and intellect of the senses for the organs of action, without the intellect backing, your actions are not effective. And of the living beings, I am the consciousness. I am the living principle in all living beings. This is what we studied last. We'll move on with the list of enumeration. It's a long list. So we will take up 23, please. Rudranam Shankarashchasmi Vittesho Yaksha Rakshasam Vasunam Pavakaschasmi Meru Shikharinamaham. Rudranam Shankarashchasmi Vittesho Yaksha Rakshasam Vasunam Pavakaschasmi Meru Shikharinamaham. And of Rudras, I am Shankara. Vitteshas, of Yakshas and Rakshasas. Of Vasus, I am Pavaka. And of mountains, I am Meru. Some of the terms we may be familiar. In case we're not familiar, we will get ourselves familiarized. Of Rudras, I am Shankara. The 11 deities of destruction, the 11 avatars of destruction. Of all the gods of destruction, I am the Mahadeva. I am the great Lord of deities of the Lord of destruction. Now, he is giving various aspects of where all Brahman is, so that some may be inspired by certain things. It's not necessary you're inspired by everything. So he is giving us a variety of things with the hope that it may inspire. A lot of people are inspired by Shankara. Lord Shankara, Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva is the god of destruction. I don't know why are you inspired by destruction. You can be inspired by god of creation, no? But many people worship destruction. So why should you worship destruction? Why are you to worship Lord Shiva? I am the Shankara of Rudras. Why should you worship the Lord of destruction? Why, Gayatri Ma?
For me, death is liberation from this some amount of vasanas. Liberation it is for me. And anybody, not only me, anybody dies means I think really liberated from the sorrows. Like
for others, liberated from the
others
sorrow,
also some portion I do think, yeah, got liberated.
No. In fact, the major portion is others are liberated when there's an end. Even though I may not say, but silently I say, "Appa, tatastu, this is the end." But why should we philosophically, jokes apart, why should we worship death? What is the philosophical representation there? Apart from you say death is liberation, death is liberation in a temporary sense, not in an absolute sense. No. Why should we worship death or god of death? Not that you're wrong. Any other reason? Okay. We have Isology. Raviji, please.
Namaskaram, sir.
Namaskar.
I can think of several reasons. One is, of course, without destruction, there's no creation. The cycle goes on. That's why we have the Trinity for each of the functions, and that cycle has to continue. Creation itself is not possible unless there's destruction. The other way of looking at it philosophically is when you talk of destruction, it's not destruction in a negative sense, but destruction of the ego, destruction of vasanas, destruction of negative tendencies, so that you're liberated. Destruction not in the sense of an atomic bomb, but destruction which leads to liberation.
Yes, you can broadly interpret it. Yes, both your interpretations are apt, sir. Appreciate. In fact, it tantamounts to saying that you must accept death, or you must accept, just as gracefully as you accept creation, you must also accept destruction. It's an inevitable part and parcel of life. Just like success is a part of life, failure also is a part of life. Just like we celebrate birth, you must celebrate death. So there's nothing terrible in death. There's nothing abominable in death. There's nothing to cry about. There's nothing to moan about. So death is an integral part of life. There is no growth without death. So therefore, even though we philosophize, but when death happens, we don't really look at it in a philosophical way. Why are we not able to bring in this philosophical perspective? Why don't we celebrate death? You go about celebrating death, then they will misunderstand you. Don't celebrate death in the sense of the word celebrate. What I'm saying is you accept it as you accept birth, as a part and parcel of life. As Raviji said, there is maintenance of the world only when there is birth and death. When there is symbolically creation is Vishnu, death is Shiva. There is Brahma and Shiva, and then there's Vishnu. There's a maintenance. Again, these gods are symbolic representation of the manifested powers of Brahman. Now, this is the job of the gurus to highlight it, not to say that there is, sorry to use the word, because you must give respect. No, if I say, sir, you are being very disrespectful, they say. If I say Mr. Shiva, they say, how can you call Shiva as Mr. Shiva? I don't know how else to call. Bhagavan Shiva, you may call. Now, people are creating existence of a personality. Brahma is not, Lord Brahma is not existence of a personality. Lord Vishnu is not an existence of a personality. They are representation. What is Brahma? What is Vishnu? What is Maheshwara? They are manifestations of Brahman. We must understand this intellectually, at least. We may look at it from a devotional perspective differently. Venkaji, Brahman, what do you understand Brahman as?
Well, I heard you saying that while you might look them from a devotional perspective, but they are all manifestations of Brahman, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara.
Correct. But what is Brahman? Correct.
Yeah. So what
is Brahman?
Brahman is the one who has evolved and who has gone into the final stages of realization.
No, Brahman has not gone anywhere. Huh? So, why are you giving a certificate to Brahman? Huh? What is Brahman?
Well, somebody who has gone into the, yeah.
We are not saying who has realized. Brahman is the self, the reality, God, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
Brahman is the reality. Brahman is the consciousness.
Okay.
What we must understand in the context is Brahman means the unmanifest reality. The Shastras, when they talk of Brahman, it is the unmanifest reality. When you say unmanifest, you and I cannot relate to that unmanifest consciousness. So, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Okay, with reference to the definition of Brahman, what would you say Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara as?
They represent the unmanifested reality.
Correct. They represent the unmanifested reality. So what are they? Are these not the manifested powers in the world?
Yes.
And just putting it in a simple layman's term to understand what it all is about.
Okay.
So the unmanifested Brahman manifests in the manifested world.
Okay.
So the power, so these three are actually powers of Brahman. They belong to Brahman. By themselves, they have no powers. Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara have no powers by themselves because they represent Brahman. They are the manifestations of Brahman. It's like you have representatives of your organization, different parts of the world. They follow the orders from you, the CEO sitting here. You command them. You give orders to them, isn't it? They on their own, they may have a certain executional powers, but they act on your orders, isn't it?
Yeah.
You are the unseen hand behind the seen representative.
Oh.
Exactly the same way, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, in fact, all the gods and goddesses, everything in Hindu pantheon is represented by a god. Fire is God, wind is God, sky
Yes.
is God, earth is God, everything is God. So these gods are manifested powers of the unmanifest reality. These gods are not to be objectified. It is not to be objectified. What happens is when you objectify it, it becomes, okay, when you objectify God, what would happen? Thanks, Venkatji. I will leave you with this. Ramji, if I can ask you, if you objectify God, what would happen? What is happening today?
You objectify, then you develop attachment to that. And then you are also limiting in the sense that you are only focusing on one object and not looking at the whole picture.
Correct. So you develop an attachment to a form, attachment to a specific deity or a god, and it limits your vision of the totality. You may call that totality by the description of that god. You can say, in fact, even in the Ishavasya Upanishad, in fact, the Isha there means the Lord, means Brahman. It doesn't mean Lord Shiva. So when you use these terms, the knowledge is to break you from bondages, not to create bondage, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when we get into the knowledge, you must attune to the absolute reality, not to the various forms.
Correct.
That's the ultimate objective. So the job of a guru or a job of a person who is doing justice to this text is to drive home this point, not to introduce idols and develop attachment. It could be any, I know there are people develop attachments to some form of deity. It could be Mahalakshmi, it could be Saraswati, it could be Ganesha, it could be, a personal god, a favorite god. Ultimately, you must go beyond the form to relate to the formless reality. Even when we are talking of the form, we are talking of the formless. So this understanding should be there. Right, sir?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Venkatji, what are you asking?
No, I said like examples like Mirabai, Ramdas and all, they have developed huge attachments. So they are not the right examples then with gods.
Sir, we can't, it will be our arrogance to say that way.
No, I'm not saying arrogance. It is my interpretation. I mean, when we are saying we will not develop, objectify gods, then they kind of did that.
So when you take examples of the great Mirabai or the great Ramdas, they are great bhaktas. They are great devotees of Lord. See, they must not mix up intellection and devotion.
Okay.
These gods are idols symbolizing the unseen, unknown Brahman, which is unmanifest. So they are able to pour out their emotion or identification with Brahman through a form. And they have attained, perhaps they've attained liberation through their path. I would say Mirabai, the great Mirabai and Ramdas have attained moksha through their path of bhakti.
Okay.
But the idol was not an impediment for them. The difference between I holding on to an idol and they using an idol was they use an idol to get to the self. But now I'm stuck to an idol. So is the problem the idol or the approach to the idol? The approach.
Okay.
So once you develop an attachment to it, then it's a limitation. But if you use it as a means to grow, which they have done and they have evolved to that great spiritual heights, it's not a problem. Sir, in fact, spiritual path, you cannot be without an idol, sir.
Yeah, that is exactly what, yeah.
They cannot be an idol. In fact, if you purely rationalize, this knowledge also is an idol. Isn't it an idol? An idol, what is the job of an idol, sir? Since we are talking of it, let us be very clear. What is the purpose of an idol?
Something which we might look up to or is a reference for us.
Anything else? When I'm saying knowledge also is an idol, idol doesn't necessarily have to be a form or an entity. The knowledge you're learning, the book, the scripture that you pick up also is an idol. So what is the job of an idol? The only
To impart
purpose of
wisdom.
an idol, no, sir. Again, an idol can be gross or subtle. An idol can be tangible, can be intangible.
Okay.
But the job of an idol is to remind you of the ideal.
Remind you of the ideal.
IDEAL. So
Okay.
IDOL represents of the IDEAL. Ideal is Brahman, the consciousness, the supreme reality.
Okay.
The various idols that we come across in the spiritual path are only meant to remind you of the unknown, unseen ideal, which is Brahman.
Okay. Okay.
But when one develops an undue attachment to the idol, to the form, to the path, it doesn't take him to the goal, which is the destination, which is Brahman. So the objection is not the idol. The objection is attachment to the idol. So we are not demeaning idol worship. We are criticizing or condemning developing an obsessive attachment to a form, any form, even the form of a guru. You should never develop an obsessive attachment to a form. Great men have come and gone. So many great men have come and gone. How can I say my guru or this particular guru is the greatest and the best? Is that not a fanatic attachment to your guru over other gurus? You bow down to every guru, but you surrender to one guru. You may seek advice from one person, but that does not mean you glorify one and develop a fanaticism to it. There's a very thin line. There's a very thin line. When I say you shouldn't develop attachment, you think you should throw about all gurus. I'm not suggesting that. So, okay. Yeah, Raviji. Raviji, there is this feature where you could raise your hand so that we know that you want to clarify something. Okay, sir.
So can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
No, no, I fully agree with you, sir. And I just wanted to give a couple of examples. One of my favorite Annamacharya kritis is Yantamatramo Yavaru Talachina Antamatrame Neevu. And I think that tells everything. He was a great Venkateshwara devotee, but he was also well aware that Venkateshwara is a symbol of the Parabrahman. And in that song, he says as much. Each person, each sect calls you by a certain name, and finally ends by saying Vedantulu Parabrahma Manuru. So, and similarly in Tyagaraja Kriti, there's a lot of evidence. Tyagaraja was totally attached to Lord Rama, but that did not prevent him from seeing that Lord Rama was a manifestation of the Parabrahman. I think there's a lot of evidence in the songs of the Bhakti saints. Yeah, I'm sure if you look into it carefully, Mirabai or Tulsidas, Goswami Tulsidas ji, and you will find the same evidence that they fully understood that their love for God, for one God, was just actually a love for the ultimate.
Yeah.
I think they understood it. They were not limited by it. Maybe because they were not attached to it. They were attached, they loved the form, but they were not attached only to it.
See, the followers have developed a fanatic attachment to the form, the guru worship, not the guru.
Possibly.
See, the guru may have, as you said, they have evolved to that ultimate evolution through a particular path or a form, but the followers have developed attachment to the form. This is where the disparity is there, evident.
And in modern times, sir, if I may just add, Ramana Maharishi had a great devotee called Punjaji. They called him Papaji from Lucknow, who was a great Krishna Bhakta, and Krishna would come to him whenever he called him and was very proud of it, I'm told. And when he told Ramana Maharishi that, Ramana Maharishi just asked him one thing, okay, Krishna comes, but does he stay forever? He said no. Then he said, then it's not the ultimate. Something that doesn't stay forever cannot be the ultimate. And then Punjaji went back and did further sadhana and then realized what Ramana Maharishi was telling him. and he became a total jnani. So I think we have a lot of evidence everywhere for that.
Sir, in absolute sense, and you make total sense when you say what you said. In real sense, jnanam and bhakti are not divorced to each other. They are one and the same. In real essence, they are the same. You know, so they don't contradict each other. So we must see in true light, they don't contradict. Right.
Yes.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you. So of Rudras, he says, I am Shankara. And then moving on, Vittesha of Yakshas and Rakshasas. Vittesha refers to Kubera. Kubera is the lord of wealth. And Yakshas and Rakshasas, as you know, Yakshas and Rakshasas are ugly monsters. And it's not literally what you are visualizing in the movies of how they have portrayed a Rakshasa or a Asura is. Because again, there are pictorial depiction of what a Asura or a Rakshasa is. But here, when he says Vittesa of Yakshas and Rakshasas, who is Kubera, the lord of wealth? So here, wealth and a king of wealth is being a king of a Rakshasa. You means you are the leader of Rakshasas. Means one who worships wealth is a Rakshasa. One who lives for it. As we say, do you eat to live or do you live to eat? We all eat to eat something to survive. Eat something means eat something healthy, eat something nutritious to survive. But if you live to eat, you're a Rakshasa. You and I need resources to meet our ends. But if you live for the sake of money, you're a Rakshasa. And the king of them is Kubera, a lord of wealth. Means I'm also reminded of the famous words of Shakespeare, you know, in the play Hamlet. Polonius is giving advice to his son Leotus, who is going for higher education. And one of the advices in that context, Shakespeare says, be rich, but not gaudy, he says. I'm quoting that particular phrase from the Polonius advice, where he says, you be rich, but not gaudy. What is being gaudy? Gaudy is, I think it is spelled as G-A-U-D-Y. Am I right? Gaudy. You must be rich, but not gaudy. Gaudy means what? SR? You any idea what the word gaudy means?
When you ask, after 30 seconds, I would have Googled, Guruji.
I tell you, you people, I tell you.
So we don't have self-knowledge. We have to have inflicted knowledge.
Inflicted knowledge. I will inflict some knowledge to you, so don't worry.
No
Now,
idea, Guruji.
No, gaudy, sir. Gaudy means it is just an ostentatious display of your wealth. You just
Showing off.
Showing off. You just try to, and that show off of wealth in an ugly manner is a quality of a Rakshasa. Only the extremely tamasic and rajasic people display their wealth. In fact, all the words which Hariji, I think it's iPhone. Who is iPhone? Raviji, you must change your brand name, sir. You're being your brand. You're supporting Apple. So Raviji also. Yes,
sorry.
sir. Chappandi.
We also say sometimes the colors are very, very bright, attractive, so very gaudy colors.
Exactly the same usage.
Okay.
Something which hits you very bold.
Oh,
something which hits you unpleasant. You know. So as they say, as Shivaji also says, cheap display or flaunting, or in fact, you must have comforts, but not Ravana's comforts. Again, Ravana was symbol of ostentatious display of his wealth. It is luxury and comfort to a point of fault, to a point where you feel repulsive to wealth. Be rich. Rich means as thy purse can buy. That's what he said. But don't have to live a life of displaying that. So Vittesha of Yakshas and Rakshasas. So one who is running after the wealth is a monster. That's what he's saying. Don't run behind it. Don't seek it as an object by itself. Now, in Vedantic study, we are given a definition, and it's very interesting to keep that in mind all the time. Keeping in the context, maybe I'll take up Hariji's clarification first before I get to this. Hariji, or what do you have to say, sir?
Guruji, here wealth means only money. Can we not say wealth of knowledge?
It is not attributed to Rakshasa.
Okay.
Rakshasa doesn't have that positive quality of wealth of knowledge.
Okay.
So in that sense, Kubera is one who he's like the RBI chairman. He has control of all the wealth. He may be a pauper, but he has control of all the wealth. That sense. So you may not take a broader interpretation to wealth here. Here we will limit it to monetary aspect.
Yeah.
Restricted. Okay, sir.
Okay.
So just giving a deeper meaning or a real understanding of how would you define a materialistic person or a sensualistic person? Who is a materialist? Who is a sensualist? From a Vedantic perspective. Very interesting. It is interesting to self-evaluate yourself, not in as much as to gauge others, but if you have the right knowledge, you can evaluate yourself. To what extent you are a materialist, to what extent you are a sensualist. A materialist is one who has a deep value for the materialistic objects and beings, or materialistic objects and things, or beings. A materialist is one who has a deep value for the materialistic objects and things. He is a materialist, irrespective of one who possesses it or not. This is a complete definition. I may possess material wealth or not, but the fact that I have a value for the materialistic things, I am a materialist. So what is the value you confer in your life for material things? What value does it have in your list of priorities in life? Or how much value do you give to what money can buy, what money can be exchanged with? What value you give? It is the value you give to the material things, irrespective of possessing or not possessing. That defines you a materialist. It's not one who is possessing it. It's not one who is enjoying it. Just because you don't possess it, you can't say, oh, I am not a materialistic person because I am living with bare minimum. Just because you may not possess it or enjoy it, but I may have a value for it, I am a materialist. Now, as I say, if I can go inward and analyze, assess myself, what is my value towards material things in life? What is my value I give? So there is this wisdom that you're getting. There is family. There is values. There is your There are many things in life that embellish your life. In the list of things that you have in life, where do you place money? In terms of value. Interesting definition. It's not whether you can live with it or without it. Don't justify it, but just the value you give. That's all matters. You can't live without it. That's not a question of debate, but what value you give it. Now, in the same way, who is a sensualist? A sensualist is one, irrespective whether he is contacting the senses or not. You may be contacting them or you may not be contacting them. But the value he sets for that sense pleasure, the value you give for sense pleasure, that determines whether you are a sensualist or not. So I may be one who is actually enjoying the senses, but I have no value for it. Or I may be abstaining from senses, but have a black market value for sense enjoyment. So I could be a hypocrite. I may be keeping away because I wear a garb. The garb protects me, or I have to live up to the garb of abstaining from sense contact, but inwardly I have a black market value for the sensual pleasures. I am an outright sensualistic person, irrespective whether I am amidst the senses or away from them. The value I give defines me what I am. I think this is an outstanding definition. Why so? Because it is not to justify, but just to be for self-evaluation. You know who you truly are, who you really are. You can't cheat yourself, can you? So you be true to yourself. Do you really have a value for what money can buy? Or do you really have a value for the sense enjoyments? This determines you. I may be very successful in fooling you, but I can't fool myself. You know, in traditional institutions, you give cash to a Swami, they don't even touch cash. Some people say, oh, you put cash at my feet. And some take objection. How can you put Lakshmi at my feet? Why is he disrespecting goddess Lakshmi? Because Lakshmi is worshipped. But I may have an objection to even holding liquid cash. I'm saying how traditionally spirituality and money are perceived. Now, is that what in real sense a materialist mean, that it doesn't contact wealth? Oh yes, sir. I am also not contacting wealth. All digital pay, sir. I am also in a very modern sense. What Prakash Ragaru? Nowadays, I am also not carrying all touch button, all password enabled transaction mine. Now, not password, it's all palm enabled. Other day, somebody was saying new technology in US is no password, it's all palm enabled. You show your palm, automatically detects it has recognition of palm, which is very unique, like thumb prints and fingerprints and things like that. It is not the physicality of it. It is not. So what it boils down to is a Rakshasa is one who has a value for worldly offerings. A spiritualist is one who has no value for it. So how spiritual you are determines the value you confer to what the world has to offer. And the value you have for anything can be used as a measure of your dash. The value you give to something can be used as a measure for dash. Measure what? Yes, SR?
Is a measure of contentment, Guruji. See, the value, how you give it, it is where you need to be really apply the brakes to your sensual pleasures, what is really need and what is over need, and where you try to figuring out the balance is the where we can able to control, bring down the expectations, what I mean in that context.
So you say the value you give determines the level of your contentment. Contentment is certainly one of the ways of measuring your spiritual quotient, certainly. In fact, you're right. The value you give to something is a true measure of how spiritual you are. Your spiritual quotient is measured by the value.
Yeah.
And the value for the lower drops only when you pick up a value for something higher. That's the thumb rule of renunciation. The thumb rule of renunciation is not renouncing the value for the lower, but is appreciating the value for the higher. So when you appreciate a value for the higher, your value for the lower automatically wanes away. So it is proportionate. If I have 70% value for the higher wisdom, to that extent, I have less value for all the monetary or material or enjoyment or what the world can give you. They diminish in value because of the proportion of value given to something higher. So the effort is to shift your attention to that. Over time, the value for this, the object will lose its charm for you. That's what it means. The object will lose its charm. The joy of the object is not gone. The object joy is still there, but it has lost its charm for you because you have no more value for it.
Value for that.
And why have you no value for that? Because you have entertained a value for something else, something better. You will actually see this in experience. You will actually experience this transformation happening if you faithfully take to the spiritual path. The object remains amidst you. The joy of the object remains the same, but the charm and the temptation it has for you changes. You don't have to run away from the objects, please. Objects, let the object be amidst you. Sorry, sir. You may have to unmute yourself again.
But I mean, Guruji, that the object doesn't influence you, so you doesn't
Correct.
fall prey for that.
The object doesn't influence you. It is no more a temptation. It is no more a distraction.
Yes.
Sir, Hariji, in the verse of the Sthita Prajna portion, and the objects itself run away from an abstinent man, he says, no? Keep the second chapter ready, Rika, Gayatri Ma. The verse number, Hariji Solvara.
I think it is 61, if I'm not mistaken.
There's a fascinating verse in the second chapter of the Gita, where '59.
Yeah.
Vishaya vinivartante Niraharasya dehinaha rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Let's wait for Kadrima to share 59th verse of chapter 2. Outstanding, outstanding.
Guruji, chapter 2, I don't have some pearls of wisdoms. I have in that this is not there.
Please add this also in the pearls of wisdom you have. The
Okay.
pearls and gems, add this also as one more pearl. Okay, wow, no problem. So please fall back on the 59th verse of chapter 2. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. He says the sense objects turn away from an abstinent man, but not the relish. Even the relish turns away on seeing the Supreme. The sense objects don't come and disturb you. The sense objects don't distract you. Why is it the sense objects don't distract you, don't disturb you?
Sorry, Guruji, I had it.
Please put it. So it was there in the pearls, no?
It was there in some other presentation.
We used in the retreat. So there you go. Please do capture very, very famous mantra verse from the second chapter. The sense objects turn away from an abstinent man, but not the relish or the longings. Even his longing turn away on seeing the Supreme. Means a little residue of, if at all, any longing or a wanting, if that is there, that also goes on param drishtva, on attaining the self, even that goes. But initially, if I entertain, what is the rationale behind this? Venkatji, do you know? Venkatamji, Bolye, you know what's the rationale behind this, logic behind this?
No, Guruji, please tell me.
No, the logic behind what?
No, I mean, you are describing about this sloka and the logic beyond this verse, or I did not.
Yeah, logic behind this, as we said, once you have no value for the object may be amidst you. But here he says, when you abstain from an object, ultimately, he says the object will not disturb you. The object turns away from an abstinent man. So if you wanting to be amidst the objects and indulge, or keep away from objects? The context we are saying is you withdraw from the lower to focus on the higher, right?
Yes.
So when you withdraw from the lower, the objects also don't come and disturb you, he says. So you take one step to the sense object, the object takes 10 steps towards you. You take one step back, the 10 steps away the object goes. Exactly the same way it works. I'm asking, what is the rationale behind this? Do you know the rationale?
The rational in the sense, as long as we don't get fascinated by the sense objects, I mean, nobody can lure us around that aspect. I mean, around senses or material things. So, I mean, I thought that is the, I mean, even though somebody wants to entice you, we might not. And beyond a point, they might not use that particular listing against whichever person or anybody for that.
It almost, we take it for granted, don't we? That it works, but the rationale behind that is any idea, anybody? Means the logic. What's the logic behind it? There's a law that supports it. Venkateshan sir, Kariyama.
Logic is the materialistic comforts are temporary. It's only an illusion. If I have this, I will have comfortable. Only illusion, not real.
No, that even when the object tempts you also, that's the reality, no? The reality may be I have fallen for the temptation.
Frame of mind. Or frame of
It is the
mind.
frame of, yes, it is the frame of mind, but what's the law which substantiates it? Okay. Vijaya is sending privately message to me. I don't know why she has to send a private message. She's a public figure in the class and she has to send publicly to me. What is this going on? Private message? Not acceptable. Put the same thing in public. It will be analyzed publicly. Raviji.
Sir, the only answer I can think of is detachment, the law of detachment. The more detached you are, I mean, the more you evolve and become detached from sense objects.
Sir, that's ulta, sir. The law of attachment is the moment you attach something, you lose it. The moment you detach to it, you get it. This is the law of attachment. So if I'm attached to objects, I'm deprived of the objects. But when I'm detached to the world comes to you. That is the law of attachment, detachment. But here he's saying the object goes away from you, from an abstinent man. Very interesting, but the way I can see where you're trying to come from, but it's ulta there. Please think along, sir. I'll happy to see Sita Ma. I think she coming. Sita Lakshmi Ma, are you coming for the first time?
Second time, sir.
Second. Oh, okay. So you are correct. I didn't see you, Ma. So I am to be blamed. So happy to have you. Any thoughts?
Sir, it's even if the sense object is right in front of you, you are not perceiving it as something that attracts you. It is there in front of you, but then it ceases to be a source of attraction to you. It's like if I want to eat chocolate, if I decide that I'm going to give up chocolate, so even if the chocolate is brought in front of me, I don't feel like eating it because that thought, it has gone from my mind. But the memory of that thing may persist in my mind that once upon a time I did enjoy chocolate. So I think when I see the Supreme, even that goes away.
Correct. Absolutely right. So the object may be there amidst you, but it has no value for you. But I'm just taking one aspect from that verse which you quoted, that from a man of abstinence, the objects don't hinder you. They also go away. So just to establish how that works, it works is a science. What we are studying is a science of life. So we're only trying to give logic so that we understand how it works. When you implement it, you see it's working. I agree with you. Perfect. Yes. Okay. Jayama?
Guruji, there is a saying by Thiruvalluvar, Virimbi ponal velagi pogum, velagi ponal virimbi varum. If you go behind it, it will go away, just like your shadow. But when you turn away, it follows you. That is the law.
You are following what Raviji said.
I had raised my hand long back, Guruji.
No, not that. Literally, I'm just making a.
Yeah, that is a Thiruvalluvar, sir. Thiruvalluvar, sir.
Very beautifully said. Very beautifully said. But again, you're trying to explain the concept of attachment, detachment here. Yeah. But that doesn't justify how the object turns away from a man of abstinence. Very beautifully explained, Annapurnama. Thanks, Yama. What you're saying is right. Like a ripe fruit doesn't stick to the tree, a matured person distances from the worldly material things. Very beautiful. Very touching, the way you put it. Correct. Hariji.
The law of supply and demand.
Correct. The law of demand and supply.
Supply.
When I entertain a desire for the world, when I have a black market value for the world, or longing for the world, or wanting of the world objects of desire are in your vicinity, or you are in the vicinity of the objects for enjoyment, because it is the desire to enjoy takes you to those particular pastures for sense gratification. And if you have no desire or no demand, there will be no supply. So the abstinence of the object or the presence of an object is a direct reflection of the desire or the value you entertain for them. So the law of demand and supply. Everything in the world, doesn't it function on demand and supply? If there's no demand, there's no supply. And that's the law which substantiates that an abstinent man, the sense objects turn away. The objects are nowhere near you because you are not entertaining any more desire for them. So don't blame the objects, don't blame the world. So the blame has to be on Ramji. Where's the blame?
Blame or credit should go only to yourself. Sir.
I am not talking of credit, I'm only talking of blame.
Blame is only yourself, means myself.
Oh,
Yeah.
I please record this section. Gayatri Ma, please record this section and send to Oshama. She is missing for a few minutes, but record this section and send. Repeat Ramji for recording purposes.
No, the blame for getting attached to things.
Don't qualify, sir. Blame should be on myself. That's
On
all we
myself.
want. We want to take this statement, recorded statement from you.
Yes, sir.
Blame is on me.
This morning only she was blaming me for everything. So I think this will fit very well there.
Sir, this is a continuous story, isn't it? It's an episode like
Yes,
any
sir.
serial going on. This goes on every day, Elias.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Huh?
First thing in the morning is that only.
So now you come to the Gita class. Here also it's going on. What is going on, sir?
That's why I come after undergoing a lot of
Conditioning, is it?
conditioning. Yeah.
So it's no different in the class also. Oh my God, I tell you. But this is where, sir, we see the rational sense, isn't it? How it fits in, you know? The law of demand and supply, and also the law of. So
But
once
in the law of demand, sorry, sir.
please go ahead.
In the law of demand and supply, before the supply stops, the price falls. If the demand goes down and supply doesn't go down, the price falls first.
Sir,
Then the supply will stop.
Sir, you're a professional in this of demand supply.
No.
I'm an amateur in this, so I don't understand.
No,
Can
sir,
you go a
no,
little
no.
slow?
I'm just saying that the phase that the person has to go through is that when there's no demand from his side, the price of acquiring it goes down because if the supply continues to be high. Then once people know that this fellow is out of bounds, then the supply will stop.
Sir, Shivaji is trying to understand the concept from tomato, sir. Yenna, sir, you're bringing the level of Bhagavad Gita to tomato. Yenna, sir, please, Shivaji, in the mother Panadengo, don't do this to me. Don't this to the Bhagavad Gita. Don't insult Bhagavad Gita by saying tomato. Yenna, sir, no doubt, understand we all are deprived of tomatoes in our food, but still don't break it down to Bhagavad Gita class. Look at the frustration, sir.
No, you will realize it next month when tomato comes for 10 rupees, sir. So that is how price falls.
No, I think you will see the maturity from how the world loses its charm. It's actually becomes a vivid reality for you. It's not a theoretical concept. You will find that transition once you invest your thoughts in the higher, you find the lower has no charm or value for you. And that's the real definition test we have given, Ramji, isn't it? Of a
Yes, sir.
So can you, I'm sure you have not jotted it down. So can you reassure us of the definition of a materialist and a sensualist?
Materialist is the one who has a deep value for materialistic objects and things, whether he possesses them or not. Okay, so that is, in other words, what value does it have in your list of priorities? So that is the materialist. A sensualist is one who, you also talked of sensualist and a spiritualist also, right? I thought I have made the 3 notes. One is sensualist, who gives value to sensory pleasures, who gives high value to sensory pleasures, and spiritualist is one, he has no value for materialistic and sensual.
No,
things.
but what is the complete definition of sensualist, sir?
Just like materialist, he has a deep value for sensualistic pleasures.
Okay. Irrespective of whether
Whether
he
he
is
has
in
them or not.
contact with them or not.
Yeah, correct.
Means a person may be in contact with a sense object,
Yeah,
but he has no value for them.
yeah.
Or a person may abstain from sense object but has a value for them.
So there is a difference between physical and mental.
Correct.
You may physically abstain, but mentally you may be still attached.
Okay, so if a person is in contact and no value, physically contacting, mentally has no value, who is he?
He is he is approaching it with a detached feeling. So he is more advanced in his spiritual pursuits than the other people.
He's a spiritualist.
Yeah.
You may find a spiritual man in certain comfort or convenience. That doesn't mean you brand him as a sensual fellow. You can't, you should not. So don't judge a person by the physicality. It's the attitude that carries with him.
Yeah. Finally, what
just
matters is the attitude of
just because just because a person puts a bed sheet and sleeps on the floor, oh, highly detached, what simplicity. That person may actually have a value for comfort and convenience. I'm not saying everybody is like that, but just because you see a person away from sense object, you may not know the value he confers to it in his mind. Yes, sir. You were saying something?
No, I was saying that the real detachment is only mental detachment, not the physical.
It is mental quality. Detachment or attachment is a mental quality. It's not a physical. It can't be measured from the physical position.
That means we can still have a chocolate without having an attachment to it.
But don't use it to justify it.
No, I'm saying that when you have it, you should not feel happy. When you don't have it, you should not feel sad. That is the relationship we should have with the chocolate or the sweet.
Or any sense object.
Any sense object for that matter.
So what is it you must do to ensure you're not justifying? So you've got to be so sure that you are truly detached. What is that acid test to put to yourself that you're not justifying and saying, let me go and enjoy it? Because it's only mental, no? The danger is there that you may justify. So what is the acid test to ensure that you're not justifying when you say this? If it's physical, very easy, sir. You are in touch with it, you are sensual. You're away from it, you're spiritual. There is no difficulty. But it is not, spirituality is not a physical place or position. It's a mental state. Now, how do you ensure it is not justified? What's the acid test? What is the acid test to test your value is the question.
I know. Yeah.
I'm just being explicit with the question, sir. I know you got it.
No, but I don't have the answer. That's why I'm thinking.
No. thinking is absolutely fine, sir. We
But,
don't need to jump at it.
basically, you have to, if there is no craving, then you can think that you have attained that detachment. But externally, if there is something you have to show, I'm not able to think about that.
So the question is, what is the acid test to ascertain your value?
Acid test which I use for myself or I use for others? I use for myself.
It is, you should never do this to test others.
Correct. So
How can you test
for
others,
myself,
sir?
it is a lingering, it is craving, and then that feeling in my mind, if I have, then that is, I still have the attachment to that.
I'm posing this question because you said of chocolate. Now, how
Chocolate,
do you?
because lady said chocolate, I said chocolate, but I would have said just gulab jamun or something, whatever. But
It doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. But
It's
the
just a
object-
matter. It's
Object is something which we are talking of. Yeah.
correct. So when you want to enjoy the object, because Vedanta doesn't say in the name of spirituality you should suppress or frustrate yourself or don't enjoy.
Correct.
If somebody will go for a meal and somebody offers you a sweet or a chocolate, you can say, "Oh, I'm a spiritual person. I don't eat all this." That kind of drama is not required. Yeah, not required. You in the name of spirituality, you should not frustrate yourself.
Correct.
Nor should you go all out. There is that. So how should I ensure the lack of the no value I have within, and continue to contact whenever there is a justifiable logic or reason to contact? Raviji.
I already posted it on the chat. I think for me, the acid test would be, it should not make any difference to my state of mind or being. It should neither add or subtract the pleasure or the state of happiness I am already in.
Very true. Okay, I'll go with what you said, sir. Yes, Sitama, you wanted to say something? Tama, we can't hear you. Could you please unmute first? Try, please, now. No, we are not able to. Yes, yes, put your thoughts in the chat box, ma, if you can. So Gatrima, yes, you said abstain and watch your mind. That's a very powerful way, yes. No desire for the object. Again, how do you know? Gajama, you may not be very sure whether you really have no desire or anything. The thought of the object should not linger. Ashama, yes, that also is very right. Objectivity, yes, Hariji, that's a question. How do you know whether you're really objective? Or you have completely lost the value for the object. Yeah, Venkateshan, sir.
See, my favorite is aloo bonda.
NSR, sorry?
My favorite item is aloo bonda.
Aloo bonda.
Aloo bonda. So I travel such a long time, long distance to have one aloo bonda. Now, the acid test is realization. Aloo bonda is not a thing which can add any value to me. It is like any other foodstuff. That realization is my acid test. See, when the knowledge says the aloo bonda, when it moves from year to year, it is same. So this is only, the taste is only when it is in the mouth. So that is very temporary. So if I can realize that it is very all temporary, So you need not have to have any attachment on that. If that realization, if I can have it, that is my acceptance.
Next week, we will supply aloo bonda to you and you'll have to put this to test.
Yes, I have made myself to walk through in the bazaar where aloo bonda is served and not consume it. That is my acid test for me. I did it.
Okay. Then after that, did you vent that frustration on somebody else?
No. No.
No frustration, no? Okay.
No. There is a realization. Okay. Doesn't make any difference whether aloo bonda or vada or bhaji. It's okay. It's all, everything is same. Everything
Don't
is
say, sir, don't say everything is same. Vada pav is different, sir. How can aloo bonda and bhaji and vada pav, Shivaji, what is this? Look at him, what he's saying. Vada pav is vada pav. How can the vada pav is the kingly status? You can't, don't demean it to anything else.
See, physical, I'm not talking about physical.
Sir, I am very particular. Vada pav is vada pav, sir. We are very particular. Don't philosophize beyond that. Don't demean vada pav. I am muting you right away before he says anything else. I get what you're saying, Venkateshan, sir. I think it is the real test is to objectively examine the state of your mind. See, nobody can evaluate you, nobody can assess you but yourself. So when you look at your state of mind in the presence of the object, when you look at the state of mind in the absence of the object, it must remain the same. So if the heart gets inflamed, when the mind gets excited in the presence of the object, it means that there is a desire or value for the object. But if the presence or absence of the object doesn't diminish or doesn't excite you, that means you have reached a state of paripurnata, a state of having transcended. The object doesn't overwhelm you in any way. That once you have reached that state where you have completely mastered, till then you have to live a life of abstinence. Be careful. Don't use experience to justify your objectivity. But once you're very sure I'm totally objective, I've completely mastered it, then it really doesn't matter. Sitama, yes, you're very right. The difference, it doesn't make a difference, the presence or absence of the object. This is what exactly we are saying, you know. So all of this we have got from when he said Vittesha of Yakshas and Rakshasas. No, he doesn't say all this there. But this is when he says Rakshasa, we said Kubera, from there we drew all this and we drew the deeper meaning. So even when there is not a mention of it, there's an indirect message hidden in it. Right, so I'll come back next week and we will complete this verse and move forward. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om